Welcome to the first story of the series of video game stories, controversies, and theories, most of which narrated by myself, the editor-in-chief of Old and New Games blog. So, today's story is how I got my Sega Genesis. And trust me, this story was hard. This is a hard story to listen to. So basically, I had two friends, and I asked them, if they had any old video game consoles, which they did. And I asked which ones, and they said Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And I was like, oh, sweet, I'm getting a twofer, because they were free. And I got both of the consoles that are my favorites. I like the Sega Genesis, and I like the Super Nintendo. Well, the day finally came around, and I finally got both my Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis all on the same day, and I had them stuffed in my locker all day, and I could just feel the tension radiating out of it, shooting through the entire building. I was surprised my locker door didn't fly off. So, I have all the cords for my Super Nintendo, but I didn't have jack anything for my Sega Genesis. So, there was only one way to do that. Call my local game shop. And they didn't have nothing. They had Model 1, but they did not have Model 2. That was weird. So, finally, the time came around, and I had to go to Maryland for a family visit. And I went to this one video game shop, which is much like my local video game shop, having all this old stuff, plus they had imports. So, I decided to buy a RF connector for the Sega Genesis Model 2, which worked fine, and I got a controller for about $3. So I thought, well, this is great. I have everything that I need except an AC adapter. So it kind of was a while before I could get one, and I finally got one, and it was a Yobo as well, and it didn't work. And I had my suspicions because it was a Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis power adapter. I was like, well, how can you fit all three of them in there on one AC transformer? And it was a gigantic one, much like the Super Nintendo or NES's power adapter. So I thought, well, might as well wait till you get home and see what happens. Plug it in, doesn't work, like I said. And so I'm running around the house, scoundering for, another AC adapter for it, and out of the blue, I find one that has the same plug, which is a really, really small plug. I was surprised how small it was, because the AC adapter that I had, the plug was, just that much bigger than the Sega Genesis port. I was just so furious at it, so, I just went around the house trying to find one, and I eventually did. And it had all the requirements to power a Sega Genesis, as far as I knew. So I plugged it in, it fit into the power slot, and I plugged it into the wall, and I turned it on, and I got the 3 red lights. I was like, awesome. So I went to test it in my room. I had to take a RF switch and had to plug it into the TV, all that good stuff. I didn't have any games for it at the time because it didn't have any of the cords. But it gave me a black screen, which is good. It was giving me some sign that it was working. So now all I gotta do is buy some games. But this was a very hard console to find stuff for. I had to go out of state to get stuff. That is ridiculous. So if you ever buy a Sega Genesis, make sure it comes with something, or buy it off the internet, or make sure there's a local game shop near you that can supply you with the stuff you need. Well, this is the first story / controversy / theory. Although this is more of a story on the stories, theories, and controversies section of sites.google.com/site/old and new games blog. And this is the editor-in-chief signing out.